we've got our server running. Let's give it a client to talk to it. Right? Oh, yeah, that's where he was going. I see now. Unity, and this is why I brought my power today. I'm going to create a new project using URP. Now, we talked about this a week or two ago, why we're using URP. You don't have to use URP, but for my project, I want to publish to virtual reality. URP is made for mobile and virtual reality type devices. HDRP is for high definition, so console or desktop or laptop. Yes.
What's the difference between the URP and just regular 3D?
3D is going to eventually be depreciated and not offered.
It's going to be what?
Depreciated.
You're going to stop developing it.
Oh boy. Okay, it's all coming together now.
In the future, URP and HDRP are going to be your, for doing 3D development or even 2D development.
Those are going to be your two
Those are going to be your two options.
Okay.
The whole 2D, 3D is eventually going to be phased out.
Okay.
So I'm getting you an early start towards the future. The future is now. Okay, so I'm selecting URP and I'm just name your project whatever. I'm going to go with Calisius Hello World and then create and we wait.
And we're in 20.2.
Yes, I'm using 20.2. We do not need, it's going to initially, it's still loading. Yeah, it's a really great scene if you want to take a look at it, but we're not going to use it. So, and I'm not going to use the post-processing volume, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm just for right now going to leave the directional light in the main camera. No, we won't need post-processing or the example scene. And I'm going to wait just a second while everybody's Unity starts. Yeah, and this will run on 2020.2 or 2020.1. So whichever one you happen to be using is fine. There's not a huge difference for what we're doing between the two versions. Now, by March, we're supposed to have 2020.3 long-term support, and we'll shift to that because I much prefer working with the long-term supports versions. That's usually better. Now, back to your desktop, to your Calisius files in the assets. I want to copy everything that's in the assets folder into my Unity project. So, well, I'm not going to drag in the assets because then it gives me assets. And that bothers me as a little OCD. So it's, I'm just going to dump it in because this is just our hello world. And so it doesn't matter quite as much.
Destroy this world.
So I'm going to just simply drag it into my assets folder. And there it is. And it's going to go through and do all of its thing. Everything that's in the assets folder,
Oh, no.
I copied all of it. So Calisius client.cs through state.cs.
If I'm making a folder called multiplayer assets, is that okay?
You can do that, but save it because, this is our Hello World project. We're going to do our Hello World project, and then we'll get started on doing our real project. And notice it's taken us a full 2 weeks just to do a Hello World. Which, well, it does tell you a little bit about the complexity of doing multiplayer. Because to do a Hello World, we had to first get a server running and get some vocabulary. I know, I realize that I spent 2 days talking about it.
I think from day one, I kind of realized how confusing multiplayer is.
It's not as straightforward, yeah. Okay, so there should be an example scene
In the scenes folder or?
Well, right, it's in the assets since I just carried it all in there.
Says there are two, does it matter which one?
Yeah, there's
One of them is a compiled,
box.
it's your meta, yeah, it's your metadata. So I want the example scene one,
Not the fossil data.
not the fossil data
Or Delta.
Delta.
or delta, fossil delta.
I clicked on it, saved my other scene.
Which what would fossil delta mean?
Fossil change?
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
Delta is change for game design. Or just, yeah, yes, that's exactly what yes. Okay, so my example scene is up there. It loaded a canvas.
It's got a canvas up, it's giving me flashbacks. Flashbacks to me.
It's really, really big,
It's huge.
and I'm on the wrong side of it. So,
Yeah, you gotta flip the camera around.
okay. Now we're ready to, does everybody have that?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, just open the, I'm just opening the example scene. I shifted to the example scene. It's not the example, well, it may still be the sample scene. So in your assets folder, there should be an example scene.
Yes.
Just double click on it. Okay, you may have opened the fossil delta instead. Okay, if you've got the example scene open, hit play.
Yo, play.
Lots of buttons here.
And lots of buttons pop up.
Send message. Create client?
Well, let's look at what has happened. Because there's a lot of stuff that just happened. So we've got create a client. Right now, I'm connecting. It's telling me where I'm connecting.
And localhost.
Local host.
So wait, we're already connected to the server?
Yeah,
We're running?
we're running what's connected to the server. Now, we haven't connected to it as a client, but
Oh,
it knows that the server is there.
It knows.
It knows, well, I think actually this is just telling us what it's going to connect to. Because we haven't actually
connection.
joined or created.
Lit, okay.
Okay, so the first thing we should do is create a client, because that'll give us a client ID. Why would we want a client ID?
So the server can recognize our client,
Yes,
right?
because everybody should have a unique ID. It's kind of like your social security number.
Yeah. Who's doing what?
Who's doing what? We need a way of keeping track of who you are.
Yeah.
It's your driver's license number. Well, not actually, but it's like that. So we do a create client
Create. Connecting.
and look at the bottom here, connecting to
My server.
my server.
Is there a debug message when it does connect?
What does it do?
It should have already connected. I'm not sure why it's taking.
Yeah, mine's also just.
I'm just trying to say.
You're just wondering if there's no debug station for like the finish.
Oh, it should give us information in the console.
And Paul goes, it didn't actually do anything, it just printed that out.
That would be so mean.
It is trying to connect.
Mine's doing the same thing yours is doing.
Yeah.
Same.
My problem is I
Except the
can't
light.
exit out of.
Oh, he's crazy.
Wait, what do you get cubes in the background for?
When you join or create a room, you'll get cubes in the background.
Whoa. Cute. Do you have any PlayStation 2?
Okay, I have a session ID now.
Whoa.
It didn't update my ID, but it did update my session ID. So I'm connected.
Did you
to
join
the
a
server.
Did you join Create Room?
I clicked on join or create. Now what join or create does is if there is currently an existing room,
You're gonna pop in.
you're going to join it.
Right.
If there isn't a room, create it. Isn't that a wonderful command?
That's a great piece.
This just looks like 8-bit Among Us.
So right now, we've joined or created a room. We've got a session ID. If you've got a session ID, you probably have some cubes in the background.
I clicked on join Create Room, but nothing has happened yet. So I don't know if that's just my computer being.
Mine took a couple seconds, and then it gave me my session ID.
Just gonna click on it. the classic.
Do it again. Click on it again.
There, it worked the second time, baby, yeah.
Have you tried turning them on?
Okay, yeah, now I got a session. ID.
Now, if you've got a session ID, you've said hello world.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You are now connected.
Submit.
You could send a message, but it would just be a message to yourself. So you're just talking to yourself, which some of you might already be used to that. But the question is if you're talking back, and then you got a problem. So we've got it. We can send a message. We can join our room. You now have your hello world. So if you do a screenshot of this with your session ID, then that's what the assignment is. You have done a hello world because you've created a server and you've launched the client. Yes.
All right, question, just messing around, but like after you create a client and like you said, join or create room.
Yeah.
And you just keep like spamming join room. You keep getting like new session IDs. Is that just like you're bouncing around to a bunch of different rooms now?
No, the room's already created. So if you've got,
What about the button below? Like if you just keep pressing that one, then it'll keep.
no, it's just because there's only one room. Now we'll get into that on the server code because you as the server programmer have control over how many rooms there's going to be. And we don't create a bunch of rooms that don't have any people in them. While some people, rich people might have rooms that they don't use, not on our server. Yes.
Like the session ID, is that just like a code that like randomizes like?
Yeah, it randomly generates a number. Yes.
So can you join each other's session ID?
Not yet, because we're all on our local computers.
Unless you got Ethernet. Then we might be able to-
Well, and it would still be running local then. So
Yeah, exactly,
it's,
that's what I'm saying.
so
It'd be
what,
local access.
yeah, it's, so, but we're going to get there. Okay. We've successfully created a local server. How much harder can it be to create a remote server? Actually, a lot. It's a lot harder, but we'll get there. Okay. You're going to be using your local server a great deal for testing because what's this wonderful thing that you can do when making a game in Unity? Play it.
Wait, really?
You could actually compile a version and publish it locally and run it
Ah.
and then have your editor running and you've got two people
On the same machine.
on the same machine connecting to your local server. Now, you can only actually have one of them active at a time to move something around, but it allows you to test your stuff locally before publishing it to the server. That's why I wanted to show you this first, because I wanted you to be able to do troubleshooting. I want you to be able to check your code before you submit it, because there's nothing more, well, I thought it would work. You've got to be able to test it in some fashion. Whether you're making a web page or making a multiplayer game, we've got to have a server to test it off of. So we now have a local server that we can test off of and be able to do this. Now, if I have some extra time this weekend, I'll try and launch a remote server and see if we can't all connect to it on Tuesday, if I've got time. We'll see if that works. That could be a fun little thing that we could all connect to it and be able to pass each other messages and things like that. We are up, we are able to do things and connect to rooms. That's all we're able to do at this point. Yes. That's all going to be on the server. So we'll have to code that in. Right now, the MongoDB's handling any send messages, but that's all that Mongo's doing for us. And I don't know that we're actually saving that to a permanent database because I started typing in it.
Okay.
Because literally I could go in here if I had an IP address.
And try to join a specific IP
Yeah, if I had a IP, I'm just making something up here. And, oh, I gotta put the port number.
25565.
Well, no, it's gotta be what the server's listening on, which Calisius generally listens on 2567. Yes,
So,
did it?
and you just like click it a lot?
Yes.
So is that, what that is doing, is it sending a signal to the server, and then the server updates the position and sends it back, and then your client updates the position of the queue based on that signal from the server?
That's what it looks like.
Look, the console's telling you state has been updated each time.
Yeah, the state's being updated. Now, what's the state?
Nothing is happening except somebody sending a message. So
But what is the
message-
state?
The server, what the server is.
It's the position.
It's the status of all players connected to that server. So every time I get a state update from the server, I'm getting all of the information of any changes of anybody that's connected to that, including myself. Yes.
So, like, when you're playing a game like Call of Duty, and there's just like a bunch of people, so it's just like this.
It's constantly
That's why you
sending,
need fast internet to be competitive. Because
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna lag out and die.
right. Yeah, first thing
So my-
usually if I'm hooking to a first person shooter game, first thing I'm going to check is what's my lag.
Lags.
Yeah.
I want that lag no more than double digits.
So like in the update, because that goes every frame, if you're lagging, you'll miss a frame, and that's why it doesn't send.
Usually, we're going to get into this. You're jumping ahead. But we are going to build a first-person shooter-esque type game. So you're going to have a chance to experience and experiment with that. My plan is I want to build a tanks game that can be played in virtual reality. You know, I'm in the tank and I can use the controllers to move around and shoot at somebody else who's in a tank. Now, theoretically, that could be played in VR or desktop. Because I'm using Unity, I can publish to either very easily. So the last thing we will do towards the end of the semester is add all the VR stuff for the controls. Because once we got the controls, we got the controls. It's just mapping it to the VR handsets. That's the plan for the semester. That's what I want, because I figure if we can build something like that and then, you know, have 6, 10, 17 people join the game, we can,
That'd be pretty cool.
I think it would. And then I'll publish it and become ultra rich. And so, but if we can do that, then we can also do a card game like, you know, Hearthstone. We can do poker. We can, you know, any type of card game, any type of RPG. It's all the same thing from there on. First person shooter is the hardest. Everything else is just a step back from that.
It's like multiplayer solitaire, baby.
Multiplayer solid. What?
I was waiting for you to realize.
It took a couple of.
Sometimes the
See,
connections
that
are a
was
little
the state
slow.
updating.
There was a lag right
Wait a
there.
minute, hold on.
There was definitely a lag there.
That was a good one.
Okay, now, if you stop play, it'll also disconnect from the room. And the rooms will automatically be disposed of on your local server.